Thanks for tuning in to Men for the Win, a podcast hosted by David Kufis and Dan Thompson, two avid fans who appreciate well-played baseball, especially when it's done by the Twins. Men for the Win is sponsored by the Grand Group with Edina Realty. Are you looking to purchase a new home in the Twin Cities area? Or perhaps you're trying to sell your current home? Whether you're upsizing or downsizing, the Grand Group with Edina Realty will meet all of your housing needs. Contact the Grand Group by emailing thegran, that's G-R-A-N, group, at edinarealty.com, or call them by phone at 612-817-8751. The Grand Group with Edina Realty, 7-time Minneapolis-St. Paul Magazine Super Agent Award winners. On this episode, Dan and Hoges recap the Twins' 3-game series against the Chicago White Sox. Thanks for listening. Enjoy. Thanks for tuning into Men for the Win. I am Dan Thompson. With me, as become usual, Andrew Hoges Hoganson, filling in for, I think David Kufis is still on this podcast occasionally. A couple things, Hoges. So I went back through. We have a spreadsheet that, dare I say, David has created. And I looked back at the schedule, and in the last 7 podcasts, I have been in 7 different locations. So, and one of them was my home, and one of them was David's. Do you know how many other places David Kufis has ever recorded this podcast, Hoges?
I believe 0. I don't think he's
0
ever
other places. He has his
else.
one room with his ceiling fan and his board game collection. So, Hoges, I just want to thank you for being the reliable co-host here for Men for the Win.
I haven't really thought of this before, but he gives you a lot of grief for not bringing your recording equipment to places, and then I have to end up filling in for you. If the shoe's on the other foot, I feel like we got some questions we can ask here about the ability to bring your recording equipment along places.
I didn't bring it to South America. I get that. And I will take
you.
that to my grave, apparently. But I have brought it to multiple states. Anyway, I'm glad you're here. The Twins get a sweep. It's the White Sox, so I guess that counts, right? They're 12-1 against the White Sox this season. They're unfortunately done with playing against them. Hoges, but you were there in Game 3. How was it to see this White Sox team in the flesh?
It's bad. It's worse in person than it is on TV. Like Castro's single today that Benintendi just let drop in front of him. The first RBI that Miranda got with the just grounder that the guy whiffed. I mean, it's a bummer watching this team almost. I mean, you hear some crazy stats that they're like, 0-68 when they're trailing in the 6th inning or something like that because the end of their reliever, the end of their bullpen is so bad. It's unbelievable watching this team. And you almost feel, not that anyone needs to feel bad for major leaguers, but you almost feel for the guys on this team because 20 in a row, that's heavy. And what's their record now? Like 27-87. They're 41 and a half games out of first place. I mean, oof, that's a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah, 20 straight losses. There's lots of records about that. It's been a long time since, well, I should say they're in rare company, losing that many games. And you do feel bad for the fans more than the players, but at some point...
Do we feel bad for the fans? I mean, I don't know if I can ever feel bad for a Chicago White Sox fan.
That's probably true. But at the same time, they gave the Twins some fight here in Game 3. We're going to get to that.
They did.
But, down 8-0. They didn't lay down and do nothing. Anyway, but it is good for the Twins. They have gained some ground in this series against some of the other teams. It's shaping up to be quite the wild card race. We'll get more to that a little bit later. I think for now, let's go into the series recap.
Series recap.
Hoges, there was the first 2 games of the series were actually quite close games up until late. The Twins do win this game 10-2. It starts with in the bottom of the first with Lewis clubbing a home run to score himself and Trevor Larnach. It's 2-0 Twins.
He is the one.
The White Sox do tie it with a Miguel Vargas home run, and then in the top of the third, that ties it at 2. But then the Twins are able to get a run in the bottom of the third, a Larnach single, a Buxton walk, then Lewis doubles, and there Lewis already has 4 RBI through the first 3 innings, and then kind of a Hank Conger moment. I know we pick on Tommy Watkins a lot. Miranda hit a ball to the left corner. Now Andrew Benintendi, who Twins fans recognize that name almost reflexively, almost like they would a Salvador Perez or a Jose Ramirez, but he threw out Miranda by 30 feet, Hoges.
Right, and it's weird too because normally like that first base when you're going to try to get a double, that's all on you. You don't really look at the first base coach that often because normally you can see out into the field. But yeah, that was a surprising moment. You don't like to see that when a guy gets thrown out that bad at second base. And back to Lewis, just it's so encouraging to see him have that start to this game because he had been slumping a little bit. And I don't know if you saw this, but apparently he was late to talk to reporters after the game because he got drug tested. And his quote was great. He just said something like, "Only ice cream in these veins, baby," or something like that, which is just awesome. Yeah,
He didn't say what brand or what kind of ice cream. I think Doe Park asked him it was chocolate later when he pressed him, which is kind of boring. Like, I don't know, like nothing more interesting here, nothing branded by Kemp's. I'm waiting for the sponsorship to come here, Hoges.
Oh, it's got to. And interesting side note, I hate ice cream. I think it's disgusting. So
really?
Just the more you know,
Hold
I guess,
on,
about me.
Like Doe Park asked Royce Lewis, let's unpack this a little bit. How do you hate ice cream? What's wrong with ice cream?
I don't know. It's just disgusting. I'm not a big sugar guy in general. Like, I don't really like sweets and desserts. And the coldness of it, it's just, it makes me ill. And I'll never forget my grandpa once bought me ice cream. And I was like, oh, he looked at my parents like, what have you done to this child to make him not like ice cream?
Hold on. You turned down ice cream from your grandfather? This is like a quintessential childhood moment that you have ruined.
Right?
For your grandfather.
Here's the problem, too. I mean, I think I probably would have been a Major League Baseball player if I would have eaten ice cream. It's what it sounds like for Royce Lewis.
At least you would have gotten a sponsorship out of it. Well, that's
true.
Wow. I have to live the rest of my life knowing that you don't like ice cream. That's a weird thing to me.
I'm sorry.
Well, let me recenter myself here. So Joe Ryan started this game. He was frustrated early, just by some of the calls he was getting or not getting. But he works into the seventh inning. He goes 6 1/3 innings, 2 earned runs, 6 base runners. I'm notably saying that in that way because we're going to talk about that a little bit later. 7 strikeouts. There's also a couple things in the bottom of the 8th. Some heads-up base running from Martin, who was pinch running from Wallner.
Clever girl.
Who took second on a sac fly. And that was important because then, and again, the 8th inning was when things went well for the Twins here. The White Sox intentionally walked lead to get to Vasquez, which was a mistake. He doubled to left center, scored a couple runs, so it's 6-2. And the Twins weren't done. Castro hit a 2-run home run. Buxton hit a 2-run home run. And so it's 10-2 before Johan Duran can even sit down in that bullpen.
I mean, that's a theme of this series. We'll get to it later with the Twins scoring so many runs in these later innings is just unbelievable. But I love the tag up and take second base on a long fly ball. That's such a savvy veteran move from a guy who hasn't been in the league that long at all. It also shows the Twins do their homework. They know the Chicago White Sox outfielders that maybe in a situation like that, they have the opportunity to run on them, and they did. And I mean, it's huge when you can have, you're playing against a team like this, but to take care of them where you don't have to use your big bullpen arms that much, that's nice. That with them being able to go to Richards, that was huge. Get him in a game where it's totally out of reach and let him get used to pitching in a Twins uniform.
Yeah, he takes the 9th. It's a clean one, and so the Twins win. Attendance, by the way, Hoges, 30,801, which is not quite where the crowds were with that Philadelphia-Milwaukee series. But then in Game 2, I think it was a sellout in Game 2, and it's no wonder because it was Joe Mauer Day here as the Twins win this one 6-2.
Yeah, it's the summer of Joe Mauer. Like, I mean, I think he gave another speech in this game again. That's basically all he does this year. He just gives speeches, gets his number retired. It was still painted on the field today, and the crowd for today's game was absolutely fantastic too. I'm just looking at the numbers right now, and it looks like there was 28,000 people. So even though the ownership refuses to do nothing, the fans are still coming out, and it's nice to see.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good right there.
Are you going to take a picture with David next to the Joe Mauer statue next year? Because I think that's the first thing I'm going to do with him.
I think that was the coolest part of it. And it was also sweet that they had Paul Molitor and Dave Winfield be the guy who kind of announced that they were getting that statue. I mean, obviously the Minnesota dudes. I mean, the whole thing with St. Paul and what they've produced for baseball players is rather unbelievable. Did you see it, if they said what gate they're putting it outside of, or if any of that is?
I think they're going to make a new gate. Actually, they're going to blow out a side of Target Field and just create a
number
new
7
entrance for Joe.
David better only go through that gate then, so we can get a picture with him absolutely every single time.
Where's the Paul Molitor statue here? I feel like poor Paul, is just getting skipped over in all of these celebrations. Poor Paul Molitor.
Hey, but he still helps us out with our base running though, so that's good to see.
Anyway, Game 2, the Twins win this game 6-2. The day belonged to Bailey Ober and all of the guys we did not pick in Puckett's picks. Ober gets his 11th win. He goes 7 innings, which is becoming standard here. 2 hits, 2 walks, 2 earned runs, 7 strikeouts. His ERA is at 3.69. There's a nice note by Doe Park here. Bailey Ober has thrown 8 consecutive quality starts, which is the longest quality start streak by a Twins pitcher in a decade. The last with 8 in a row was Phil Hughes in 2014. If he does it one more time, it'll be 9 in a row, and that ties him with 2009 Nick Blackburn. Bailey Ober has just, he's turned himself from a low-level prospect into a playoff quality starter right now, Hoges.
That's some pretty auspicious company right there with Nick Blackburn Blackburn and Phil Hughes, where that he'll be
true.
joining. But yeah, I mean, his ERA right now is 3.69. Joe Ryan's is 3.59. I mean, he's close to having the lowest ERA of all of our starters. You could make a solid argument they wouldn't do it, but that if they make it to the playoffs, that Bailey Ober could open the series for them. And the thing that impresses me the most about him right now is he's doing this so efficiently. You said he went 7 innings, which has been very, very normal for him lately. He threw 88 pitches. I mean, that's phenomenal. I love that. It's good for the guys in the field too, where they're getting in and out right away. And we'll talk about it later, but today was a slog. And so to be able to have that, I think it helps the bats. 7 strikeouts with 88 pitches is pretty sweet.
Well, the Twins are able to there's a couple of home runs in this game. Jeffers hits one early. Kepler hits one late. But this is another close game. It's 2-2 through 6 innings. We get a Jeffers home run early, Corey Lee RBI triple, a Brooks Lee RBI single, so it's 2-1 Twins. And then Brooks Baldwin ties it for the White Sox, but is in the bottom of the 7th when they get that Kepler home run to break the tie. And then again, it's the floodgates in the bottom of the 8th. The Twins get 3, highlighted by a 2-out, 2-run RBI single by Castro on a 13-pitch at-bat where it felt like he was fouling everything off. It was only a matter of time until he hit one into the field.
That's another theme for today, with guys just keeping the at-bats going and being able to like really wear down those pitchers and then finally getting something to hit. I think this team is really starting to do that a lot more lately. It was nice seeing Kepler get that home run after getting hit in the head in the last game, or at the end of the last series. It didn't sound like there was anything really wrong with him, but they just wanted to be careful, which you can never fault them for doing with those head issues. So yeah, good to see him contributing. And it's crazy. You start looking at his stats this year. He has been a huge part of this team. His batting average is up in the 260s now. It's nice having that, and we know we always get that defense in right field.
Well, I mean, who could forget the way that he plays defense in right? Top of the 9th, so the Twins bring in Duran because he was warming up for so long. They thought, oh, what the heck, let's have him come in. He needs just 6 pitches to get 3 outs, and then to come back to what we were talking about earlier, Buxton, Lewis, Miranda go 0 for 8 with 3 strikeouts and 4 walks in this game, but they don't need them, no runs, and the Twins lose their 19th straight, and that becomes a 20th Hoges in Game 3, which the Twins win 13-7. You were at this, and there was no rain delay.
No, it was phenomenal. But here, I finally get to go to a game that doesn't have a rain delay. And today they were giving away the City Connect backpacks. So I have 2 boys, so we decided to get there an hour early because I wanted to make sure that we were able to get them. So we get to the game at 12 o'clock. Starts at 1:10, 3-hour and 22-minute game, which is just, that doesn't happen anymore. My kids were going crazy. The White Sox pitchers walked 9 guys today. The Twins walked 6, so 15 walks total. And most of those walks were on long counts, too. It wasn't like it was a 4-pitch walk. There was a lot of battling up there. The Twins never really felt like they could give this one away, but if people just want to know, I can let them know when I'm going to a game with my kids, and you're either getting a rain delay or close to a 4-hour game. It is just an absolute guarantee.
It started off that way, right? Top of the first, Simeon Woods Richardson, who on the radio, Chris Atterbury just calls him Sim, which I'm kind of coming around to because that takes a whole lot less to say Sim than SWR. A long first inning, though. It's scoreless, but he threw something like 30 pitches, allowed a couple walks and a single, but no runs. And then in the bottom of the first, very White Sox here. The Twins get a couple guys on, though Eddie Castro gets picked off at first. This is maddening. Willie, you're playing the White Sox. Like, you don't need to make this fancy. Like, Willie, get back to first base. Drive me nuts.
Right. It's insane. There's been so many mental errors for that guy this year, and it's becoming a thing, and you hope it doesn't become a thing with him too, where he kind of gets in his head even more, because just from the outside looking in, it seems like he's one of those guys where if he starts overthinking that kind of stuff, the mistakes just start piling up, because he seems like a very high character guy. So it doesn't seem like this is something where it's just like a lapse or a lack of, I mean, it is a lack of focus, but I don't know, it's hard to really blame the dude's effort, and it just keeps happening. It just keeps happening.
Well, the Twins still get some runs in that inning because Brooks Baldwin botches a routine grounder to second. That allows Buxton to score. Then Jose Miranda gets an RBI, so it's 2-0. And then at the bottom of the second is the big inning in this game. 5 of the first 6 Twins to come up to the plate reach. Lewis hits an opposite field 3-run home run, which is not where we're used to seeing Lewis home runs, Hoges.
No, and it didn't even look like that strong of a swing either, but he just got it out right into the flower bed. So again, nice to see him picking up where he left off after a few rough series there.
Sox chip away, though. They get 2 runs in the 3rd, 1 in the 4th, 2 in the 7th, and it's 8-5. In the top of the 6th, also, there's a play kind of in the midst of that where Buxton goes back, crashes into the wall, makes a catch. He did leave for what it turned out to be precautionary reasons. It didn't necessarily feel precautionary, though, because it was still a baseball game when Margot came in for him. He did say after the game he is okay.
He hit that wall hard. I feel like you could feel him hit that wall. We were sitting way up behind home plate in the upper deck, and I feel like you could still feel it back there. And it's so funny because, I mean, it was a spectacular grab, absolutely spectacular. And the crowd cheered really loudly and then just silent when you saw like how hard he hit. And he laid down for a while. Kepler helped him up, and then he got a real awesome standing ovation the whole way in as Royce Lewis was doing the bow down motion as he was running off the field. But yeah, encouraging news after the ball game, but definitely a few nervous moments there.
Well, in the bottom of the 7th, the Twins were able to add on some runs. They get a couple on a bases-loaded walk by Castro, then a sac fly by Jeffers. This is just the sort of thing you need to do when you're ahead. You need to just tack on a couple runs. It's 10-5. White Sox get 2 runs off of Randy Dogwinek in the 8th, though, so it's 10-7. But again, this White Sox bullpen, the Twins get 3 hits and a walk, including a bases-loaded single from Castro, so it's 13-7 through 8. And then again, Trevor Richards, the backup closer here, apparently pitches the 9th. The Twins win it, send the Sox to the 20th straight loss. Every Twins starter has at least 1 hit. And so we look at the standings, Hogs. The Twins have actually gained a little bit of ground on the Guardians here, but in the wild card, they are half game on the Royals, and then they are still 3 clear from the Red Sox, the Astros a little bit farther back, and the Rays. There are still some teams here fighting for these spots. And there's the Mariners fighting with the Astros there in the West. So, I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, probably 8 or 9 teams still fighting for these playoff spots. I think it's going to be a fun finish.
It's going to be a stressful 2 months here as we close this season out, but I think it's going to be a ton of fun.
They go to Chicago next, then they play the Guardians and the Royals here, so they've got a chance here to really potentially separate themselves a little bit. Let's move forward here into Puckett's picks.
Touch 'em all, Kirby Puckett!
Puckett's Picks winner.
I mean, it's hard to fault the listeners here. They pick Lewis, who had a huge series, couple home runs, 18 points. Hoges, you were actually second with half as many, with 9 for Buxton. Miranda is the pick for David. He had 8. And then Wallner had 7 for me. So if you take away Lewis, it's pretty competitive, but he was the clear winner here in this series.
Which, frankly, it's pretty nice to see. Like, it's nice to see him do that. I wouldn't mind if the listeners went on a bit of a run here with taking Lewis every single time and scoring some points.
Well, David still has a lead. He has 18 points on the season standings. You have 11.5, Hoges. You need some of these wins. The listeners are at 8.5. I am at 6.5. The listeners did get the half-point bonus there because of Lewis. It's hard to go away from him just because when he's hitting well, it's so beautiful. There's something different about a Royce Lewis home run than I think about anybody else, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. And he has so much confidence. He gets the crowd so jacked up. His teammates love him. The thing I love most about him with his attitude is that he has so much confidence, but like a lack of cockiness, if that makes any sense. Like there's still that humility there, and it comes across as a guy who's just having a ton of fun playing baseball. And I agree, you're always going to have a lot more fun when you're doing well, but that man has been through so much, and he's kept that positive attitude, and I love that combination. It's a very tricky line to walk, and he does it so well, and it makes him so likable.
We have more to say about him in the next segment.
Beast versus Bench.
Is losing fun? Is losing fun?
I'll pick up on that, and I picked Lewis. Obviously, the big series, the Puckett's Picks points, I think bear that out really well, and some key home runs in big spots. But he's the guy that I want my kids to kind of emulate and root for because of all the reasons you just said. He seems like a great teammate. This guy has only played 102 games, I think, in his major league career. He's a top. You can check out Aaron Gleeman's X thread, and he's got some nice tweets about how significant he is historically. But he really is on this early track to be a Twins great, and David will tease us about small sample sizes, but he's got the it factor, and when he has the it factor, this Twins team is a different team.
Well, I don't know if I'm just in a good mood because I saw a great Twins win, or it's just been a great weekend, but I'm going to give David some props here, because now that I think about it, when we were talked about the difference between it's not just a 1994 Camry or a 2024 McLaren, with talking about Joe Mauer to like Josh Donaldson on the cocky scale, maybe Royce Lewis is that happy medium. I mean, maybe that's what it is, and we're seeing it right now. And I got to say too, I was wearing my City Connect Royce Lewis jersey today at the game. It was nice seeing him do so well with that on.
Hold on. So what car would you compare Royce Lewis to?
I don't know what it is.
To choose one.
I don't know what it is, but I think he's the guy. I think he's the answer. That's what it is.
Holgers are like onions.
Could he be? I'm trying to think of a good, reliable car. A
Toyota
Chevy
Camry,
a Tahoe, or something.
We could not have picked 2 more different cars.
to say. Anyway, who's your beast?
It's Lewis. Like it really is. But I really liked how Miranda did in this series. He had a great game 1 where he's getting back on track a little bit. That average is still sky high. He ended up going 2 for 4 in game 1. Not a great game 2, but then he went 3 for 5 today with a couple ribbies. It's good to see him producing, and I'm excited to see him be one of the top 3 hitters in the game of baseball in a year.
I am not throwing away my shot.
If you look at this lineup and you say, hey, now let's add Carlos Correa back, I feel like I'm a little bit, I don't want to say numb exactly, but I don't appreciate quite how good this lineup is right now. We're very spoiled, and it's not Bomba Squad-like. It's not so reliant on power. But you look at all of those averages and those OPS numbers, I mean, like, this is a lineup that I would imagine other teams are afraid to face.
Do you want to hear something crazy about this game today? So the Twins starting lineup and the White Sox starting lineup, the only player on the Twins who had worse batting average than the White Sox best batting average. So the White Sox best batting average on their team is 239. Christian Vazquez is the only starter on the Twins who had a batting average under 211. And that's frankly
crazy.
It's not even that close. Like 239 is one of the they have guys, they're mostly around low 200s. It's absurd how bad they are, and it's really speaking to how good this lineup has been. And all the Twins OPS numbers, like you said, all of them are above league average with the exception of like Martin and Vazquez. So it's pretty phenomenal what this starting lineup can do. And you're right, we get Correa back. This team's deadly. That's an offense I would love to watch in the playoffs.
And it makes it so that there's really not a rush to bring Correa back right now. Like, I don't want them to bring him back unless he's totally ready to play again. Because what we don't want is last summer again, right? Where Correa's kind of at, 50-60%. As far as bench goes, and this is splitting hairs when you sweep a series, I went with Carlos Santana because he was 0 for 6 and kind of the only regular who was hitless. But I feel like it was, a deserved bench spot that the guy got to have a day off here for game 3.
I mean, I think you picked the obvious one, but I went with Simeon Woods Richardson today. It's a little frustrating that he struggled so much. When you get out to an 8-0 lead in 2 innings, you'd like to just be able to kind of go on cruise control, have your starter go deep. It doesn't matter if they give up a lot of runs, but he just labored through those innings. He ended up throwing, I believe, 89 pitches before they pulled him out. I mean, it's just tough that they weren't able to go deeper into that game, and that we were in a situation where Duran had to warm up. This has been 2 games in a row. I'm still not concerned. He's a young guy, but I don't think they're going to let him go much higher in his pitch count just because of how much he's pitched in the majors. So it was rough to see today that he didn't make it farther.
I think they have to consider changing the order of the rotation because Festa and SWR are so clearly the 4th and the 5th guys that I think for the sake of the bullpen, and I get that people could say, oh, that's getting a little cute. Well, I mean, when have we seen these guys go 6-7 innings? Like, we're just not. Whereas the other 3 are certainly candidates to. We're not seeing David Festa go 7 innings. And I think that would spread out the bullpen load just to switch this up just a little bit.
All right, well, let's move on to Rocco's Rewind.
Rocco's Rewind.
This actually goes off of what I was just talking about, but I thought this was a smart handling of the bullpen, all things considered. But with Festa Monday, they really do have to play well because they used a lot of arms in this series. You mentioned how they warmed up Duran a couple times and didn't need him.
Yeah.
So I do certainly hope that Festa can give him certainly at least 5, maybe 6 innings here, and maybe it's if there's ever a time for a comfortable win, I think it would be Monday.
Yeah, I mean, not to belabor this point, but when you're up 8-0 in the second inning, you do not want to have to be warming up your closer in the 9th inning. That's just not great.
What do you have for Rocco?
I have to say it. It's not fair at all. But why? Why are we pinch hitting Manny Margot? And granted, it's because Buxton ran into the wall that they had to take him out of that game, and he was batting first. It was the 3rd out of the inning. He was the next guy up.
Hang on a minute. We could use a pinch.
They didn't really know how he was feeling, so Rocco made the correct call, I think, to take him out of the game. But the streak continues, folks. The streak continues. Margot is 0 for 9 million, and it's probably just going to get worse.
This is a different instance, though, right? I mean, like, he felt like he had to use him here, but it's ironic that the man that he turns to is Manny Margot, who has no capacity to get a hit. He should start bunting just because he would
really
have a better
should.
chance.
Or just not swinging, maybe hope that the pitcher won't realize that and maybe he'll walk him. I mean, it's just unbelievable. I think is it 27 now? I don't actually know what the right number is.
I think it's something like that. Yeah.
The whole crowd just groaned too. I mean, granted, we all were nervous about Buxton at that point in time anyways, but it was like, cool, this guy.
Well, that's a good segue actually into the Minnesota moment.
Minnesota moment.
Yeah, to me, I think the most important part of this end of this series was Buxton's grab in the top of the 6th because the game was still a little bit hairy. And granted, the White Sox did still get closer after that. But if that ball drops, that's 2 runs scoring. It's 8-5 in the 6th. And I don't think we fully appreciate how great that guy is in center field. I know we talk about it a lot and we do notice it when he's not there, but a play like this where he didn't really even rob a home run, it was just amazing that he even got to that ball, and then to hit that wall with that much force. It was a little bit like the Buxton of old, which I can't say I really miss because I don't want to see him missing time, but I do miss seeing that. A guy just sacrificing his body in order to do that. I'm glad he's okay, but yeah, it was pretty awesome to watch. I haven't heard an ovation like that at Target Field for a defensive play in quite some time, and I think that this one was really deserving of it, and it was cool seeing how pumped all the other players were for the Twins too.
If you compare him to where he's at last year, he's only 28 at bats shy of what he had all of last season. His batting average this year as compared to last year is 276 to 207. He is on pace legitimately to have his best season since 2017, or maybe you could argue 2021, which was in kind of a smaller sample size. I think he's a candidate for comeback player of the year. I haven't looked around yet to see kind of the rest of the league and what that looks like, but what he has meant to this team has been phenomenal, Hoges.
And I think it's been kind of quiet almost too. Like I feel like it's been a little bit under the radar because you have guys like Lewis that are turning heads so much, and Correa's even had quite an amazing year. But Buxton's OPS is 846, and with offense being down across the league, that's even more impressive. And for him to just do it that consistently and be that guy out in center field is so huge for this team, especially with the other injuries that Correa's had to go through and Lewis has had to go through. I don't think any of us would have picked Buxton as being the most reliable guy and the guy in center most nights. It's phenomenal.
He's a great third fiddle, right? I mean, like if you think of some of the great teams in baseball, and you always have a few guys, I don't think that the Twins actually want him to be number one or number two. I think you'd rather have Correa and then Lewis and Buxton and then maybe even Miranda somewhere in that mix. He seems to thrive on the lack of pressure.
And that's no disrespect to Buxton at all.
No.
I think that's a compliment to him because he's filling that really, really well. And I agree with you. I don't think he's the guy. He's not a rah leader guy either. He's more of a lead by example guy. And I think he's playing his role beautifully this year. And I think it is cool that it's a little bit under the radar, but it's good to talk about with how, 276 compared to 200. That's 70-point increase. That's amazing. And it's been fun to see. We all agree that he is one of, if not the most exciting player to watch in the game of baseball when he's out there.
My Minnesota moment is kind of quick, but I've talked to this earlier, but the 8th inning, to score 12 runs in the 8th inning in this series, you will win, dare I say, every baseball game that you play. If you're going to score that many over the course of a series, it gave them some padding in the first couple games. And in the third game too, it was always padding, but you'll take that so you don't have to have a stressful 9th inning. I think with that, Hoges, let's move forward here to Mauer's musings.
I just don't know how it can get any better.
Mauer's musings.
As I'm kind of kissing the podcast goodbye for a while after doing this many episodes in a row, I wanted to get your opinion on how your expectations have changed for this team from our season opening episode where we did all of our predictions to where they are right now with how this team has performed.
So to refresh people, we predicted this would be a playoff team, kind of around 90 wins, I think all of us. That's still within reach, I think, if they have a strong finish. But I feel almost better in a way about this team's capacity to win a playoff series. I just think their margin of error is tighter because of the starting pitching, because I think they've got the 3 solid starters in Lopez and Ryan and Ober, but I'm worried about the rest of that. And so if anything, I feel really good about the guys that we thought we were going to have in this team, with the bonus of a guy like Miranda, maybe filling in for an Eddie Julian.
Yeah, I agree with all your points. I guess the one thing that I would add is I think I've been more impressed with the performance of this team than maybe I thought with what their record has been and how they've been doing. But I'm almost a little bit more skeptical just because of the competition that's in their division. Like if you tell me they're 62-48, I'm going to go there in first by 7 games. We didn't know the Guardians were going to be this good. We didn't know the Royals were going to be this good. And we didn't know we'd be fighting for the Red Sox still, even for a wild card in that. So I think a little bit more pessimistic just because of the challenges that is going to face them. But that has nothing to do with the performance of the team. I would say my expectations are higher based on how well they've played.
Yeah, I think we wouldn't have predicted that the Royals and the Guardians would be quite this good and that the Central might send 3 teams to the playoffs.
Unbelievable. That would have been, if you would have put that as your most preposterous prediction that we would have had, we would have just laughed that off the screen. That wouldn't even qualify as preposterous. It would just be like, that is not happening.
So my musing is more specific here. It sounds like Kyle Farmer, you remember him, is supposedly coming back, Hoges. And my question is, how is Kyle Farmer coming back to this roster? Who's leaving to make room for this man?
no one, like I don't want anyone to leave. Like even Martin adds something that Kyle Farmer can't bring. Martin has speed. He's got defense. I mean, I'm not that Farmer's that bad defensively, but Martin can play everywhere. He can play in the outfield. He can play in the infield, and he's faster. I don't know. I don't like it. Whose spot do you think he takes?
I think that it's maybe Brooks Lee because those positions match up a little bit better. But it makes me sad if that's the choice. I really want this to be a Joey Gallo situation where it's like there's something that lingers in his rehab assignment. And this is not a slight against Kyle Farmer, but it's like if I had to choose between Farmer and Lee, yeah, Farmer's got veteranness, but Lee is the future here, and I see a negligible difference between their ability to play the spot. If anything, Brooks Lee is demonstrably better.
Yeah, and I think he's shown he belongs in the major leagues too. And then, I mean, it even gets worse too because with Correa coming back, there's another guy that's going to be on the chopping block.
Well, we'll see. I mean, maybe there's some more mystery injuries, and that doesn't even include Alex Kirilloff, who I think is a longer discussion where his future with this team is just maybe in doubt. But let's go ahead and let's look at this series once more and grade it.
Series grades.
I said this last time. I said I would be quick. I think the system is pretty clear here. The bar was high. Hogue, you had to sweep this series
absolutely,
to be able to do the advanced retreat. So it's a 10 out of 10 because they won it, and they scored plenty of runs. So that's good. And then as far as well-played baseball, especially if, sometimes you read one essay and it's bad, and then you read another and it's mediocre, and the mediocre looks great compared to the bad, right? So even by that metric, it's a 10 out of 10 for well-played baseball just because you look at how poorly the White Sox play.
Yeah, and we put up 29 runs. So you can't fault them there. I went with an A too. Like it was a bit of a boring series, if that even makes sense with scoring that many runs. I mean, it's just you were supposed to win and they did though. And that I talked about it in the last episode. That is what they have done so well this year. So it's an A, and bring on the boring series. Like let's win the ones we're supposed to win. That's how you make the playoffs.
Well, we have a number of things to cover here in Herbie's headlines. So let's go to that.
I don't know, Jack. It looked like Herbeck pulled him off the bag.
Herbie's headlines.
So a number of things here. So there was a game that was pitched by Blake Snell, had a 3 base runner game. It was a shutout for the San Francisco Giants against the Cincinnati Reds. And so I think we should applaud this. Hoax, do you want to add any details about this game here?
It was also a no-hitter, I believe, is what they call it in the business. Blake Snell had never pitched an 8-inning game before in his career, much less a complete game. So it was nice that they were able to keep him out there. He threw 114 pitches, and you know that manager is just dying watching that all happen, but I'm glad that he kept him in. And did you see the post game where they almost gave him a concussion, where they just tossed the water cooler on his head?
That would be, well, he's not really in a playoff race. The Giants aren't really there, but he was a guy I would have loved the Twins to go after. He had some trade value. I suppose the Giants are kind of kicking themselves here in a way for not trading him. A couple other notes here. So Bobby Witt Jr. was the July Player of the Month. His batting average in July, 489. What a month for this guy and for the Royals.
He's absurd. And we're going to get to more too, but he might be the front runner for the AL MVP, especially if there wasn't a guy that you happen to love in New York who's belting 41 home runs already. But I mean, it's the race for MVP in the AL is going to be very, very fun, minus the fact that they're playing for the Twins' biggest competitor for a playoff spot probably right now, and the worst team in the league that I just can't stand.
Well, and you did mention him.
All rise for Dan's Judge Love.
All right, so Aaron Judge hit his 41st home run on Saturday, so that's great. But then later in that game, second inning, the Blue Jays are playing him, and they did something that is rare. And this is one of our favorite things, Hugs, where something happens that is the first thing to happen since with a bunch of variables. So I'm just going to read this to you and the rarity of this. I got to find the right paragraph here.
So paragraph, not just one sentence, it's a paragraph.
So he was intentionally walked with nobody on. And so this is the paragraph. No hitter had been intentionally walked with the bases empty this season, and it happened only 3 times last year, once to Judge. And it's the Barry Bonds treatment, but it had been more than 50 years since a player received a bases empty intentional walk within a game's first 2 innings.
And the sun was shining and the wind was coming out of the west, and it only had to be 57 degrees when it happened. But we make fun of those stats, but I love them. I mean, it's so cool. And do you blame him? I think I would almost walk him every single time now. I mean, he is on fire this year, a year after a historic year. It's just that the guy is crazy. There's no words for him anymore.
One more thing, and the Olympics are going on right now, Hoges, which I'm sure based on your physical abilities here, you're probably paying a lot of attention to this and have a bunch of appreciation for it. But Major League Baseball is at least talking about participating in the 2028 Olympics, and I'm curious for your thoughts on whether this could happen or do you think it should happen?
I would love it to happen. The Olympics are like my favorite thing to watch anytime. It's just so fun just seeing how unbelievably unathletic I am compared to all of these people, and just the ability to play for your country. I love that. That's why I like the World Baseball Classic so much. I think it's going to be difficult because obviously the Olympics are in the summer, right in the middle of the baseball season. They'd probably have to take about a 10-day, maybe even 2 weeks off of the baseball season if they are going to let Major League Baseball players play. I would love for it to happen. I feel like it's something that won't, just because of all the details that have to go into it. If you're a guy that's not playing in the Olympics and there's just 2 weeks off, I mean, baseball players don't do that. They have to keep going. It's such a routine. I want it to happen. I don't think it will, though.
I have one Twins player that I think will participate.
Oh, Canada.
I can see Eddie Julian playing for that team. And maybe even Justin
that.
Morneau. Maybe they can bring him up, but I think...
some Corey Koski, too, maybe getting back for him.
I think it's such a disruption to baseball's season. I can see them saying things kind of like Rocco did. You know, like, oh, well, that would be cool, guys. But there's no way that's going to happen. Like, he didn't say the second part, but I have a difficult time seeing them stretch that. I mean, the baseball season already stretches into November, essentially, with the World Series.
They're never going to shorten the season. Like, they're never going to drop it down to 150 games or anything like that. And it's just so different than hockey because of just how baseball works. Like, hockey can afford to do that because they can condense the schedule a little bit more on either side of that because there are way more built-in off days. 162 games is a lot. There's not a whole lot you can do with that.
And we'll see you tomorrow night.
Puckett's Picks.
It's no surprise here the listeners are going to stick with Lewis. David, who is actually going to one of these Cubs games here on his way back from the board game heaven that he's been in here for the last few days. So he's going to pick Miranda. I pick next. I will take Buxton, which leaves plenty of people for you, Hoges.
I think I'm going to switch up my strategy a little bit here. I am going to pick Christian Vasquez.
Okay, explain yourself, because I think I know what you're doing here.
I'm so sick of getting second. I cannot get second anymore, and I think behind Lewis and Buxton, there's zero chance I have of winning this thing. So I'm gonna try to throw it. But if I win, I knew it all along.
I can't compete with you physically, and you're no match for my brain.
Christian Vasquez is going to have a series here. Well, Hoges, it has been a joy to be co-hosting with you for this stretch. David has been, twisting his mustache with comebacks here, and he ambushed you the last time that he was off for a while. So I'm steeling myself here for the criticisms.
I don't think he's going to let you off the hook for that one. I feel like it will get brought up again. I was pretty thoroughly undressed by him in that episode.
All right. Well, folks, if you like what you hear, please tell a friend. You can follow us on X at Min for the Win, and you can find our Min for the Win Facebook and Instagram pages. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast on your favorite platforms so you're notified when new episodes are available. And if you could leave us a rating or a like, we would greatly appreciate it. If you'd like to support the show further, you can find us on Patreon. The link is in the description. Thanks for listening, and as always, go Twins. That'll wrap up another episode of Min for the Win, a podcast hosted by David Kufis and Dan Thompson, two avid fans who appreciate well-played baseball, especially when it's done by the Twins. Thanks so much for listening, and as always, go Twins.